The lights of Nexus 7 trading station flickered against the starfield like a distant city floating in space. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its massive arms while traders and diplomats moved through its corridors. The station served as neutral ground where species that might fight elsewhere came to do business in peace. Mingji pressed her face against the viewing port of their transport ship as they approached. She had dreamed of this moment for years. As Earth's first xenobiologist to visit Nexus 7, she would finally meet alien life forms face to face. Her research back on Earth had prepared her for this day, but nothing could match the excitement of actually being here. "Stay close to the group," Wujin said from behind her. The security officer checked his equipment one more time. His job was to keep the human delegation safe during their first official contact with the Galactic Trade Council. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today." Nari looked up from her translation device. The young woman had spent 3 years learning the basic languages of 12 different species. Her equipment could handle the rest, but personal knowledge always helped during important meetings. "The Kaleri delegation is already waiting for us," she said. "Ambassador Thylex wants to begin talks as soon as we arrive." Their ship docked with a soft bump that barely registered through the artificial gravity. Captain Hyen of the station's security force met them at the airlock. The older man had worked on Nexus 7 for 10 years and knew how to handle first-time visitors from new species. "Welcome to Nexus 7, he said with a slight bow. "I hope your journey was comfortable. The Kaleri are very interested in meeting your people. They have heard interesting stories about humans." Minji stepped into the station corridor and gasped. The ceiling stretched high above them with walls that curved away into the distance. Beings she had only seen in photographs walked past them without giving the humans a second look. A group of tall blue creatures with 4 arms carried containers toward the docking bay. Small furry beings with large eyes scurried between the legs of bigger species. "This way, please," Captain Hyen said, leading them down a wide corridor. "The meeting room is in the diplomatic section. Security there is very tight, so you will be completely safe." They passed through several checkpoints where guards from different species checked their identification. Minji noticed how the guards worked together despite being from worlds that might not always get along. Nexus 7 truly was neutral ground. The Kaleri delegation waited in a circular room with a domed ceiling. Ambassador Thylex stood nearly 8 feet tall with gray skin that looked like stone. His species had a reputation as fierce warriors throughout the galaxy. 2 other Kaleri flanked him, both wearing what looked like ceremonial armor. "Humans," Thylex said in accented but clear English, "we have waited long to meet your species. The stories we hear are very interesting. Some say you are brave. Others say you are foolish. Today we will learn which is true." Minji stepped forward. "Ambassador Thylex, we are honored to meet you and your people. We hope this is the beginning of friendship between our species." The Kaleri ambassador studied her with dark eyes. "Your species is young compared to ours. We have fought in wars across the galaxy for thousands of years. What can humans offer that we have not already seen?" Before Minji could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed along the walls and a voice spoke in multiple languages over the communication system. "Emergency alert. All personnel report to designated safe areas. Containment breach in Research Wing 7? This is not a drill." "Captain." Hyen's face went pale. "That's impossible. Research Wing 7 has triple security locks. Nothing should be able to break out of there." The floor beneath their feet shook violently. Through the viewing windows, they could see other ships undocking from the station in panic. Whatever had escaped was serious enough to make experienced space travelers flee. "What kind of research happens in Wing 7? Wujin asked, his hand moving to his weapon. "Classified projects," Captain Hyen said. "Things too dangerous for normal space. The containment fields there are designed to hold anything." Another shake ran through the station, stronger this time. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. In the distance they could hear screaming. Ambassador Thylex drew a weapon that looked like a crystal rod. Kaleri warriors do not run from danger. We will investigate this threat. No, Captain Hyen said firmly. My orders are to evacuate all diplomatic personnel immediately. This could be extremely dangerous. Through the wall came a sound that made everyone freeze. It was like metal being torn apart, mixed with something that might have been roaring. But there was something else in the sound, something that seemed to reach directly into their minds and whisper of dark spaces between stars. The Kaleri warriors took a step backward. These beings who fought wars across the galaxy suddenly looked afraid. Ambassador Thylex gripped his weapon tighter, but Minji could see his hands shaking. What could make Kaleri warriors afraid? She asked. Nothing in normal space, Thylex said quietly. But there are things that exist between dimensions, things that should never be brought into our reality. The roaring came again, closer this time. Other species were running past the windows outside their room. Minji had never seen so many different aliens moving with the same expression of pure terror. We need to evacuate now, Captain Hyen said. Whatever is in Wing 7 is heading this way, but before anyone could move, the wall at the far end of the room began to glow. The metal grew bright and started to bend inward as if something massive was pushing against it from the other side. The temperature in the room dropped so quickly that their breath became visible. Stay back, Ambassador Thylex screamed, raising his weapon. Everyone stay back from that wall. The wall burst inward with a sound like thunder. Through the hole came something that seemed to absorb the light around it. It was huge and moved like liquid shadow given form. Eyes that burned like dying stars looked around the room while tentacles or arms reached out to test the air. Every alien in the room backed away in terror. Ambassador Thylex and his warriors pressed themselves against the far wall, their weapons ready, but their courage clearly failing them. Captain Hyen grabbed for his communication device to call for emergency evacuation, but Minji stepped forward. The creature that emerged from the torn wall defied every law of physics Minji knew. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, its form shifting between solid matter and something that looked like living darkness. Parts of it appeared to phase in and out of reality while other sections remained disturbingly real. Minji, get back here! Wujin shouted from behind her. His voice carried the edge of panic that she had never heard from him before. The security officer had faced dangerous situations across 3 star systems, but nothing had prepared him for this. The creature turned what might have been its head toward the sound. Where its eyes should be, 2 points of light burned like stars collapsing into black holes. The temperature in the room dropped even further and frost began forming on the walls. Ambassador Thylex pressed himself against the back wall, his weapon still raised but his entire body shaking. Human, you do not understand what you face. This is a void spawn. They exist between realities and consume everything they touch. My people have legends about them from the ancient wars. Legends that end badly, one of the other Kaleri warriors added. His voice sounded hollow with fear. Entire worlds have been lost to creatures like this. There is no fighting them. There is only running, but Minji did not run. She took another step forward, her eyes studying the creature with the same careful attention she had used to examine specimens in her laboratory back on Earth. While everyone else saw a monster from their worst nightmares, she saw something else entirely. The creature's movements were not random. There was a pattern to how it shifted and changed. The way it held its form reminded her of deep-sea creatures she had studied, beings adapted to environments where normal rules did not apply. Its bioluminescent patches pulsed in what looked like a rhythm. It's scared, she said quietly. What did you say? Captain Hyen asked from where he crouched behind an overturned table. He was speaking into his communication device, calling for emergency evacuation of the entire diplomatic section. I said it's scared. Look at how it moves. It's not attacking. It's defensive. Something that powerful wouldn't hesitate if it wanted to hurt us. But it's staying back, testing the environment. The void spawn made a sound that was part vibration and part something that seemed to happen inside their minds rather than their ears. Several of the aliens in the room cried out and covered their heads. But Minji listened carefully, trying to understand what the creature might be trying to communicate. "You're insane," Wujin said. "That thing just tore through a wall designed to contain the most dangerous research in the galaxy. It's not scared. It's deciding which of us to eat." First, through the hole in the wall, they could hear more sounds of destruction from deeper in the station. Emergency alarms continued to blare, and the lighting kept flickering between normal and emergency power. Whatever was happening in Research Wing 7 was getting worse. "There are more of them," Ambassador Thylex said, his warrior instincts finally overcoming his fear enough to let him think clearly. The research wing contained multiple specimens. This is just the first one to reach the diplomatic section. As if summoned by his words, another creature phased through the wall on the opposite side of the room. This one was smaller but moved with quicker, more aggressive motions. It immediately oriented on the largest group of people and began moving toward them. The aliens scattered in every direction. Captain Hyen dove behind his overturned table while the Kaleri warriors retreated toward the door. But the second creature moved to block their escape route, its form spreading out like liquid shadow to cover the entire doorway. "Now we're trapped," Nari said from where she had taken shelter behind a decorative pillar. Her translation device was beeping frantically as it tried to process the strange sounds the creatures were making. The first void spawn, the larger one that Minji had been watching, suddenly moved. But instead of attacking the humans as everyone expected, it positioned itself between the smaller creature and the group. The two beings faced each other across the room, their forms rippling with what looked like agitation. "They're communicating," Minji said with growing excitement. "The first one is telling the second one something. Look at their bioluminescent patterns. They're synchronized now. Human madness," Ambassador Thylex muttered. "She sees communication where normal beings see death approaching." But Minji was right. The smaller creature stopped its aggressive approach and took a position near the door without blocking it completely. Both void spawns now oriented on the humans in the room, but their posture had changed from threatening to something that almost looked curious. "Nari, what is your device picking up from them?" Manji asked. The translator checked her readings with shaking hands. "It's picking up electromagnetic patterns that might be language, but the syntax is completely alien. The computer can't make sense of it. But there are repeated elements, like they're having a conversation." More sounds of destruction echoed through the station. Through the viewing windows, they could see that most of the other ships had undocked and moved to a safe distance. Only emergency vessels remained, their lights flashing as rescue teams tried to evacuate personnel from the affected sections. "We need to leave now," Captain Hyen said. "My security teams report that at least 6 more creatures have escaped containment. The entire research wing is compromised, and they're spreading throughout the station." Wujin moved carefully toward Minji, keeping his weapon ready but not pointing it directly at the creatures. "Come on, we have a clear path to the door now. We can make it to the evacuation ships." But as the humans began to move toward the exit, something extraordinary happened. The larger void spawn moved with them, maintaining its position between the humans and the smaller creature. When Captain Hyen tried to join their group, both creatures immediately became agitated, their forms brightening and expanding. "They're only protecting the humans," Nari said in amazement. "They're treating us differently than the other species." Ambassador Thylex stared at the scene with growing understanding. The ancient texts speak of this, the fearless ones who could walk among the Shadow Guardians. But we thought they were myths created to give hope during the dark times. The smaller void spawn made the mind sound again, but this time it seemed directed specifically at Minji. She closed her eyes and tried to understand what it might be trying to tell her. Images flashed in her mind, pictures of spaces between stars and creatures lost far from home. "They're not monsters," she said, opening her eyes. "They're refugees." The word refugees hung in the air like a challenge to everything the galaxy thought it knew about void spawns. Ambassador Thylex stared at Minji as if she had claimed the stars were made of water. Even Wujin looked at his colleague with concern, wondering if the stress of first contact had affected her judgment. Refugees from where? Captain Haiyan asked from behind his makeshift shelter. His security training told him to evacuate immediately, but something about the way the creatures were behaving made him pause. In 20 years of station security, he had never seen anything act the way these beings were acting. Nari worked frantically with her translation device, trying to make sense of the electromagnetic patterns the creatures were producing. The computer kept rejecting the data as impossible, but she had learned to trust unusual readings during her years of language study. "The patterns are becoming clearer," she said, adjusting her equipment settings. "It's like they're learning to communicate with us in real time. The bioelectric signatures are adapting to frequencies that our brains can process." The larger void spawn moved closer to Minji, its massive form rippling with what looked like contained energy. Up close, she could see that its dark surface was not actually black but contained swirling colors that existed at the edge of human vision. It was beautiful in a way that defied description. "The creature is trying to show you something," Nari said, reading the energy patterns on her device. "The electromagnetic pulses are forming images. It's attempting visual communication." Minji closed her eyes and opened her mind to whatever the being was trying to share. Images flooded her consciousness, not quite dreams, but not quite memories either. She saw vast spaces between dimensions where creatures like these lived in harmony with forces that normal physics could not explain. She saw the moment when everything changed. Scientists from an advanced species had torn holes between realities, dragging these peaceful beings into a universe that was slowly killing them. The dimensional rifts had been created for weapons research, with no thought for the creatures who called that space home. "They were taken from their world," Minji said, opening her eyes. "Someone pulled them through dimensional barriers into our reality. They're dying here because this universe operates on different physical laws than their home." Dr. Jinwoo appeared in the doorway, having ignored evacuation orders to reach the diplomatic section. The station's chief scientist had spent his career studying theoretical physics and knew more about dimensional research than anyone else on Nexus 7. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The energy requirements, too. Pull matter from parallel dimensions would be enormous. Only the most advanced civilizations would even attempt such experiments." The smaller void spawn turned toward Dr. Jinwoo and made the mind sound again. This time, the scientist staggered as images filled his thoughts. His face went pale as he saw the same visions that Minji had experienced. "The Zentari," he whispered. "It was the Zentari Research Division? They've been conducting illegal experiments in the deep sections of the station. Dimensional weapons research that violates every galactic treaty." Ambassador Thylex lowered his weapon completely for the first time since the creatures had appeared. The Kaleri had fought wars against the Zentari Empire and knew their reputation for dangerous scientific experiments. If the Zentari are involved, then these beings may truly be victims rather than invaders. Through the broken wall, they could hear the sounds of more creatures moving through the station corridors. But the sounds were different now, less destructive and more like beings searching for something they had lost. "They're looking for a way home," Minji said with growing certainty. "All of this destruction is happening because they're trying to find the dimensional rifts that brought them here. They want to return to their own reality." Nari's translation device suddenly produced clear sounds instead of the electronic beeping it had been making. The creatures were learning to modulate their communication into frequencies that the device could process. "Help," the device said in a mechanical voice. "Home, lost, dying." The simple words sent a chill through everyone in the room. These beings that had terrified an entire space station were asking for help in the most basic way possible. "We have to do something," Minji said, turning to Dr. Jinwoo. "You know the station systems better than anyone. Can the dimensional rifts be reopened?" The scientist ran calculations in his head, considering power requirements and safety protocols. Theoretically, yes. But it would require accessing the Zentari research computers and reversing their experimental procedures. The energy surge alone could destroy half the station. And if we do nothing? Wujin asked. These beings continue to deteriorate in our reality while more of them break out of containment. Eventually, their life systems will fail completely. And they'll die, but not before their death throes tear apart everything around them. Ambassador Thylex stepped forward, his warrior instincts now focused on a clear mission. The Kaleri military has protocols for dealing with Centauri illegal research. If you can prove they were conducting band-dimensional experiments, we can justify taking action. The larger void spawn seemed to understand their conversation. It moved to the broken wall and gestured for them to follow. The meaning was clear. It wanted to show them something. It's leading us to the research wing, Captain Haiyan said. That could be extremely dangerous. The containment failures are spreading throughout that entire section, but Meiji was already moving toward the creature. If we're going to help them get home, we need to understand exactly what the Zentari did to bring them here. As they prepared to follow the void spawn through the destroyed corridors of the research wing, none of them noticed the small recording device that had been watching from a hidden panel in the wall. Deep in the station's computer core, encrypted files were being transmitted to a Zentari ship waiting in the outer system. The beings they thought were refugees were about to lead them directly into a trap that had been years in the making, but, for now, all they could see was a creature that needed their help to find its way home. The larger void spawn moved through the hole in the wall with fluid grace, its form adapting to fit through spaces that should have been too small. The humans followed, with Ambassador Thylex and his warriors providing security from behind. As they entered the damaged corridors of Research Wing 7, the true scope of the Zentari experiments became clear. The walls were covered with energy, patterns that hurt to look at directly, and the air itself seemed to ripple with dimensional distortions. By the ancient wars, Ambassador Thylex breathed. What have they done to reality itself? The corridors of Research Wing 7 looked like reality itself had been wounded. Walls bent at impossible angles while sections of floor disappeared into what looked like empty space. Energy patterns crawled across every surface like living things, pulsing with colors that had no names in any known language. The larger void spawn moved through this chaos with ease, its form adapting to the dimensional distortions as if they were natural parts of its environment. Minji followed closely, amazed by how the creature navigated spaces that made her eyes water just to look at them. Stay close together, Dr. Jinwoo warned from behind. These dimensional tiers are unstable. If you fall into one, we might never find you again. Seahan, a human engineer who had been working on station maintenance when the emergency began, came running down a side corridor toward their group. His work suit was torn and his face showed the kind of terror that came from seeing impossible things. The entire engineering section is compromised, he shouted as he approached. Whatever these things are, they're not just breaking containment. They're changing the fundamental structure of the station itself. But before he could reach the group, a section of the ceiling collapsed. Twisted metal and sparking cables crashed down, blocking his path and creating a gap that opened directly to the vacuum of space beyond the station's hull. Seahan was caught on the wrong side of the collapse, with deadly space pulling at him through the breach. His magnetic boots kept him anchored to the floor, but the emergency seals were failing and atmosphere was rushing out into the void. I can't reach him, Wujin said, studying the collapse. The gap is too wide and the structural damage is too severe. Even if we could get across, the whole section might give way. Ambassador Thylex and his warriors began setting up emergency force fields to contain the breach. But their equipment was designed for normal space emergencies, not dimensional catastrophes. Without warning, the larger void spawn moved past all of them. Its form stretched and expanded, flowing across the gap like liquid shadow. It reached Seahan just as his boots began to lose their grip on the damaged floor. Instead of the attack everyone expected, the creature gently wrapped part of itself around the human engineer. Its body became solid enough to anchor him while also forming an airtight seal around the breach. The rushing atmosphere stopped, and the immediate danger passed. It saved him, Nari said in amazement. The creature risked its own stability to protect a human it had never met before. The void spawn carefully carried Sayaham back across the gap and set him down safely among the group. The engineer stared up at his rescuer with wonder and gratitude, clearly struggling to process what had just happened. "Thank you," he said simply. The creature's bioluminescent patterns brightened in what looked like acknowledgement before it continued, leading them deeper into the research wing. They passed through several more damaged sections, each one showing evidence of the Zentari experiments. Laboratory equipment lay scattered and broken, while computer terminals displayed readings that violated known physics. In one room, they found containment units that had held the void spawns, now empty and showing signs of having been breached from the inside. "Look at these readings," Dr. Jinwoo said, studying one of the functional terminals. The energy levels required for these experiments were massive. They were literally tearing holes between dimensions on an industrial scale. Ambassador Thylex examined the Zentari equipment with growing anger. "This technology is banned by 17 different galactic treaties. The energy signatures alone would have been detectable across multiple star systems. How did they conduct these experiments without anyone knowing?" "Because Nexus 7 is supposed to be neutral territory, Captain," Haiyan said grimly. "No one would think to look for illegal weapons research on a trading station. It was the perfect cover." As they explored deeper, they encountered more void spawns. But instead of the chaos and destruction everyone expected, something remarkable was happening. The creatures were protecting human personnel they found throughout the damaged sections in the station's medical bay. They discovered that 3 void spawns had formed a protective barrier around Dr. Yuna, a human medic who had been treating injured station personnel. The creatures had somehow stabilized the dimensional distortions in that area, creating a safe zone where normal physics still applied. "They won't let any other species near me," Dr. Yuna explained. "But they've been incredibly gentle with the human patients. One of them even helped me move an injured person to safety when the ceiling started collapsing." Further on, they found Dong-Yun, a young human communications officer, working alongside 2 void spawns to repair critical station systems. The creatures seemed to understand technology in ways that defied explanation, their forms interfacing directly with computer systems to stabilize failing networks. "It's like they recognize something in us," Dong-Yun said as he worked. "Something that marks us as different from other species. They respond to humans in ways they don't respond to anyone else." Nari's translation device had been growing more sophisticated as it learned the void spawn communication patterns. Now it was producing complex translations that revealed the creature's true nature. "They call us the Fearless Ones," she reported. "In their dimension, courage and curiosity are the highest virtues, because they allow beings to explore and understand the infinite spaces between realities. They recognize those qualities in humans." Ambassador Thylex listened to the translation with growing amazement. The ancient Kaleri texts speak of this prophecy. Beings from beyond the stars who would recognize the fearless ones and bow before their courage. But we thought it was mythology created during the Dark Ages. The larger void spawn led them to the heart of the research facility, where massive machines hummed with dangerous energy. Computer displays showed dimensional maps that hurt to comprehend, while energy readings indicated that the experiments were still continuing automatically. "The machines are still running," Dr. Jinwoo said with alarm. The Zentari programmed them to continue the experiments even after evacuation. "They're still pulling more creatures through from the other dimension." Through the viewing windows of the central laboratory, they could see the truth of the Zentari plan. The creatures were not accidentally displaced refugees. They were being systematically harvested from their home dimension to be studied and weaponized. "They were going to turn them into living weapons," Minji said, horror filling her voice. "The Zentari were planning to use these peaceful beings as interdimensional soldiers." The void spawn beside her made the mind sound again, and images filled her consciousness. She saw the full scope of the Centauri plan. Fleets of enslaved creatures used to attack enemy worlds by phasing through their defenses, entire species displaced from their home dimensions to serve as living weapons, but she also saw something else. In the creatures' memories were images of humans, not as they were now, but as they might become. Beings who could bridge the gap between dimensions, who could communicate with creatures from beyond normal space, who could stand as guardians between realities. "They've been waiting for us," she whispered. "For humans. We're the key to stopping what the Centauri have started." As if summoned by her words, emergency lights began flashing throughout the facility. A new alarm joined the others, this one, indicating incoming ships. Through the external viewers, they could see Centauri vessels approaching the station. The real confrontation was about to begin. The Centauri battlecruiser Darkstar approached Nexus 7 with weapons powered and shields raised. On its bridge, Commander Vex studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The dimensional experiments had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, and now it was time to reclaim their valuable test subjects. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the research wing," reported the tactical officer. "The specimens appear to have broken containment as planned. Phase 2 of the project can begin immediately." But Commander Vex was not prepared for what his sensors were showing him. Instead of the chaos and destruction they had expected, the void spawns were moving in organized patterns throughout the station. More disturbing, they seemed to be protecting certain personnel rather than consuming everything in their path. Back in the research facility, alarms continued to blare as the approaching Centauri ships were detected by the station's defense systems. Dr. Jinwoo worked frantically at the control terminals, trying to understand the dimensional equipment while Admiral Yumbi's fleet held position at the edge of the system. "The good news is that I can reverse the dimensional rifts," Dr. Jinwoo announced. "The bad news is that doing so will create an energy cascade that might destroy the entire station." "And if we don't reverse them?" Wujin asked. "The Centauri will recapture these beings and turn them into weapons. Based on what I'm seeing in their research files, they've already identified 17 other dimensional species they want to harvest." Admiral Yunbi's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Admiral Yunbi of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have detected illegal dimensional weapons research aboard this station. All personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately." But before anyone could respond, something extraordinary happened. Every void spawn throughout the station suddenly stopped what they were doing. Their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, creating a network of light that pulsed in perfect harmony across multiple decks. "They're communicating with each other," Nari said, watching her translation device struggle to process the massive data flow. "The entire species is having a conversation. I've never seen anything like this." The larger void spawn that had been guiding them turned to face Minji directly. Its form began to change, becoming more solid and defined. For the first time since they had met, it took on a shape that was almost recognizable as humanoid. Through Nari's device, its thoughts became clear words. "Fearless one, the time of choosing has come. We must return to our realm before the weapon makers claim us. But first we honor the ancient promise." "What promise?" Minji asked. Images flooded her mind, not just from the creature before her, but from every void spawn on the station. She saw the true history of their species, beings who had existed between dimensions for millions of years, serving as guardians of the spaces where realities touched. Long ago, they had made contact with the first sentient species to achieve interdimensional travel. That species had promised to help protect the boundaries between worlds, but they had instead used the knowledge to wage war. The void spawns had withdrawn from normal space, waiting for another species worthy of their trust. "You have proven yourselves," the creature continued. "Where others see monsters, you see beings in need. Where others flee in terror, you step forward in friendship. The courage of your species marks you as the true guardians we have sought." General Tiemann and a squad of Kaleri warriors arrived at the research facility. having fought their way through the damaged sections of the station. The Calori military leader stopped in amazement when he saw humans standing peacefully among the void spawns. "By the ancient texts," he whispered, "the prophecy is true. The fearless ones have come, and the Shadow Guardians recognize them." The Zentari battlecruiser had moved close enough to begin transport procedures. Commander Vex was preparing to beam his teams aboard when every void spawn on the station suddenly moved to the outer hull. Their forms passed through the station's walls as if they were made of light, taking positions that surrounded the approaching enemy ship. "Sir, we have a problem," the Zentari tactical officer reported. "The specimens are not behaving according to our projections. They appear to be defending the station. The void spawns linked together in space, their bodies creating a barrier between the Zentari ship and Nexus 7. Energy patterns flowed between them, forming what looked like a massive interdimensional shield that deflected the cruiser's scanning." Beams. Back in the research facility, the largest void spawn began the ceremony that would be remembered throughout galactic history. It moved to the center of the room and began to change again, its form becoming even more solid and defined. "What is it doing?" Dr. Yuna asked as she and the other human survivors gathered to watch. "Preparing for the recognition of the fearless," Ambassador Thylex said with awe. "I have studied the ancient texts my entire life, but I never believed I would witness this moment." The creature's form settled into a shape that was clearly designed for ceremony. It stood nearly 12 feet tall, with appendages that could serve as arms and a section that might be called a head. Bioluminescent patterns covered its surface, pulsing with colors that seemed to carry meaning beyond mere light. Slowly, majestically, the void spawn lowered itself to the ground before Minji. Its massive form touched the floor in what was unmistakably a bow of the deepest respect. The gesture was repeated by every other creature throughout the station, all of them turning toward the research facility and bowing in perfect synchronization. "The recognition of the fearless," General Tiemann said, dropping to one knee himself. "According to legend, this marks the moment when the Shadow Guardians choose their champions. The human species has been chosen to serve as bridges between dimensions." The ceremony continued as the largest void spawn extended what appeared to be its head toward Minji. She understood instinctively that she was meant to touch it, to complete the connection that would formalize the bond between their species. As her hand made contact with the creature's surface, knowledge flowed between them. She saw the vastness of interdimensional space, the countless realities that existed beyond normal perception, and the threats that moved between worlds, seeking to destroy everything they touched. "You will learn to walk between stars," the creature said through their connection. "Your species will become the guardians of the boundaries, protectors of all realities. This is your destiny, fearless one." The Zentari battlecruiser tried to break through the barrier of void spawns but found their weapons useless against beings that existed partially outside normal space. Energy beams passed harmlessly through their targets while physical projectiles simply disappeared into dimensional rifts. "Fall back," Commander Vex ordered reluctantly. "We cannot retrieve the specimens with them in this configuration. Inform High Command that the project has encountered unexpected complications." As the Zentari ships retreated, Admiral Yumbi's fleet moved closer to provide support. The Admiral's voice carried new respect when she spoke over the communication system. "This is Admiral Yumbi to all personnel. We have witnessed something unprecedented today. The human delegation has successfully established first contact with an interdimensional species. This changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." The recognition ceremony reached its climax as every void spawn on the station raised their forms toward the stars, their combined bioluminescence creating a beacon that could be seen across the entire system. It was a signal to their people in the spaces between dimensions, announcing that the fearless ones had finally been found. The age of humanity as interdimensional guardians had begun. 6 months after the events at Nexus 7, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The trading station had been rebuilt and expanded, now serving as the first interdimensional relations center. Ships from hundreds of worlds arrived daily, not just for trade, but to witness the miracle of human void spawn cooperation. Minji stood in her new office overlooking the main docking bay, watching as a group of young trainees practiced communication exercises with their void spawn partners. She wore the insignia of the newly created Department of Interdimensional Relations, a position that had been created specifically for her after the recognition ceremony. "The morning briefing is ready," Changmin said from the doorway. The former Earth diplomat had been promoted to Ambassador of Interdimensional Affairs, a role that required him to negotiate with beings from multiple realities. "We have 3 new contact requests from dimensional species that heard about our success with the void spawns." The transformation had not been easy. The initial panic throughout the galaxy when news of humanity's bond with interdimensional beings spread had required careful diplomacy to manage. Many species feared that humans would use their new allies as weapons, just as the Zentari had planned, but the opposite had proven true. The void spawns had taught humanity about the delicate balance that existed between dimensions, and how that balance was constantly threatened by those who sought to exploit interdimensional space for personal gain. "Any word from Captain Jisu's expedition?" Minji asked. "They successfully made contact with the Crystal Singers in the Andromeda Rift," Changmin reported. "Another peaceful species that was displaced by dimensional raiders. Captain Jisu reports that the void spawns were able to guide them home safely." The UES Pathfinder, humanity's first interdimensional exploration vessel, had been designed with void spawn input. Its hull incorporated materials that existed partially outside normal space, allowing it to navigate the dangerous currents between realities. Captain Jisu commanded a crew of volunteers who had trained for months to work alongside their interdimensional partners through the office windows. Minji could see the memorial that had been built in the center of the station, a crystalline structure that caught and reflected light from multiple dimensions. It honored both the void spawns who had died in Zentari captivity and the station personnel who had lost their lives during the dimensional breaches. The crystal fragment at its heart pulsed with gentle light, a gift from the void spawns that served as a beacon for lost interdimensional beings. Already, it had guided 17 different species back to their home realities. "Dr. Yuna wants to see you," Changmin continued. "She has the psychological evaluation results from the new training group." Dr. Yuna had become the leading expert on human interdimensional psychology, studying why humans uniquely could form bonds with beings from other realities. Her research had revealed that humanity's evolutionary history of facing the unknown with curiosity rather than fear had created neural pathways that other species lacked. "Send her in," Minji said. Dr. Yuna entered with a tablet full of data and barely contained excitement. "The results are remarkable. The new trainees are showing even stronger interdimensional sensitivity than the first group. Dongyun scored highest on the empathic communication tests." Dongyun had become something of a celebrity after footage of him working alongside void spawns to repair station systems had spread throughout the galaxy. Young humans from across Earth's colonies volunteered for the interdimensional training program, hoping to follow in his footsteps. "There's something else," Dr. Yuna said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The void spawns have been sharing more of their historical records with us. They've identified the source of the dimensional raiders that have been displacing peaceful species." She activated her tablet's holographic display, showing a map of interdimensional space that hurt to look at directly. Dark spots marked areas where the fabric of reality had been damaged by uncontrolled experiments. The Zentari weren't the only ones conducting illegal research. There's an entire network of species using dimensional technology for conquest and exploitation. The void spawns call them the reality reapers. The news was sobering but not entirely unexpected. Intelligence reports had indicated that the Zentari dimensional weapons program was part of a larger conspiracy involving several aggressive species. "What do the void spawns recommend?" Minji asked. They want to establish a proper interdimensional council with humanity as the primary representatives for normal space species. The idea is to create a formal organization to protect the boundaries between realities. Before Minji could respond, her communication device activated with an emergency signal. The beacon in the memorial was pulsing rapidly, indicating an incoming interdimensional distress call. All hands to emergency stations, Captain Hyun's voice announced over the station speakers. We have multiple dimensional rifts opening in Sector 7. All interdimensional response teams report for immediate deployment. Minji grabbed her equipment and rushed to the emergency bay where Woojin and Nari were already suiting up. The security officer had become the leader of the Interdimensional Rescue Corps, while Nari had developed translation protocols that worked across multiple realities. What's the situation? Minji asked as they boarded the response ship. 3 different species being pursued by reality reapers, Woojin reported. The void spawns detected them trying to escape through our dimensional space. If we don't help them, they'll either be recaptured or die in the transition between realities. The rescue ship launched from Nexus 7 with a mixed crew of humans and void spawns working in perfect coordination. This had become routine over the past months, but each mission still carried tremendous risks. As they approached the dimensional rifts, Minji could see the fleeing refugees. Crystalline beings that looked like living geometric shapes, flowing entities that resembled liquid starlight, and small furry creatures with too many eyes and not enough limbs to be from normal space. Behind them came the reality reapers, massive ships that seemed to tear holes in space-time just by existing. Their hulls were covered with weapons designed to capture rather than destroy, making them even more terrifying than conventional warships. This is Ambassador Minji of the Interdimensional Relations Center, she broadcast on all frequencies. You are in violation of interdimensional sovereignty laws. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Reality Reaper commander responded with contempt. Humans. You think your alliance with the Shadow Guardians makes you powerful. We have been harvesting realities since before your species learned to make fire. But the commander had underestimated what humanity and the void spawns had accomplished together. The rescue ship was joined by a dozen others, each crewed by human void spawn teams. They formed a protective formation around the refugees while additional ships emerged from dimensional rifts to cut off the Reaper's escape routes. You face not just humans, Minji replied, but the united forces of 17 interdimensional species who have chosen cooperation over conquest. This is your final warning. The Reality Reapers found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by beings who understood interdimensional space better than they did. After a brief skirmish, they retreated through rifts that immediately sealed behind them. The rescued refugees were safely escorted to Nexus 7, where they would receive medical treatment and assistance in finding new homes or returning to their original realities. As the rescue fleet returned to station, Minji reflected on how much had changed since that first terrifying encounter with the void spawns. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors but as bridges between worlds, protectors of the innocent, and guardians of the boundaries between realities. The communication device crackled with another signal, this one from deep space. Another species in need of help, another chance for humanity to prove that courage and compassion could triumph over fear and exploitation. Minji smiled and began preparations for their next impossible mission. The universe was full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and humanity would meet each one with open hearts and steady hands. In the interdimensional space between realities, the void spawns sang songs of gratitude that echoed across dimensions. The fearless ones had kept their promise, and the galaxy was safer because of their boundless courage. The age of interdimensional peace had truly begun.